Let's crack on with day 3. Starting off with the Turner's Novices Chase, again another one which changes name every year. Mighty Potter. Kate, you're on that side now.
I'm over here now, ta-da.
There you go. Mighty Potter is the favourite for this. Apart from that P, which was a blip here at the festival last year where he got a little bit upset. Basically everything went wrong for him. He looks a more mature horse this year. He's won 4 on the bounce, including last time in top class company. He's the one to beat.
He is the one to beat, and the market would have that certainly so. But like you say, he does just have that blip. But I know that Gordon Elliott and Connections think the world of this horse, and they have already basically dubbed him as their Gold Cup horse for next year as well. You know, they've always thought an awful lot of him, but he is priced up accordingly, unlike Banbridge. But El Fabiolo then in here, I believe, is actually second in the betting, whether or not they step him up and trip, Andy. So how are you assessing this at the minute?
I think this is probably one of the best betting races of the festival. If you look at Banbridge and his price in isolation, I think the actual original price that was up there, 7-4, is probably more in keeping what he'd probably be on the day. Because again, I think this race is going to cut up quite dramatically. Probably, 7 or 8 run a field maximum. If you've got an account with William Hill and you do bet each way, how many each way thieves are there out there? Plenty of you? There you go.
Right here.
I'm definitely in that category as well. Bar or fall, he can't be at the frame, Banbridge, and I think he could bustle up the favourite. He got beat by Mighty Potter, fair and square on the day in the Drinmore, but the ground wouldn't have suited Banbridge that day. He's very much a good to soft ground horse at worst horse, and he was just struggling to get out the ground. Mighty Potter's a more, deep girth horse. He's stronger through the shoulder, just a more powerful, arguably slightly classier horse than Banbridge. But I still thought Banbridge ran with a great deal of credit. He only got beat 10 lengths. It was a really good run. But since then, he's obviously gone on to run better in defeat against the mighty El Fabiolo, which was the best novice chase run so far, either side of the Irish Sea, time figure-wise. It's an absolute burn up, that Irish Arkle. A real deep field, a field that would have graced any Cheltenham Festival. And he started on very strongly in eye-catching in second. Now, doing his time comparisons with Mighty Potter, who ran the day after, he came out best, if you do like a circuit comparison, roughly about 15 lengths better. So he's certainly got the legs of Mighty Potter on good ground. The fact that he's 2 for 2 at Cheltenham as well, I think that's got to stand him in good stead. He jumps particularly well. I'll say bomb-proof because that's one-way ticket to get him on the floor. But you get where I'm coming from. He's got a really good technique. Like I say, in a race where there's very, very little case to be made out for too many, I think the cream will rise to the top here. And I do think Banbridge at 4-1 has got to be one of the standout each-way bets of the entire festival. So I'm very, very keen on Banbridge, just from a value perspective.
But it is each way play you'd be siding with. Is that because of the fear of Mighty Potter?
Well, you'd have to. You're going to get most of your money back. I think it's the percentage call as a pro punter. That's the way I like to look at races like that. I take it on the chin if Mighty Potter beats Banbridge, but I'm pretty sure that Banbridge will chase him home and finish second or third at the worst. You have a 50 quid each way. You're getting, 90 quid, you're only losing a tenner, which is a good bit of business, really. If you can't win, then don't lose. That's the adage, isn't it? So that's the way I look at it. As a punter who, doesn't want to be giving money away on a ready basis. So that's the way I'm approaching it. But I do think Banbridge can win. I don't think it's one of them bets where you think I'm $1 million to win here. Yeah. Mighty Potter's got to prove himself around Cheltenham, and like I say, Banbridge is 2 for 2. So there's a lot of sense behind having a crack at Mighty Potter with Banbridge.
And there's a lot of sense why you were so quick to eject yourself out of the seat to go and get the lads down there to rectify that price.
If they boost Banbridge 2 points to 6-1, then happy days.
We'll see how that goes then. Now, Barry, we are playing a little bit of Willie Mullins bingo for which of his battalion he's actually going to be stepping up in trip for the Turners here. We have just sort of covered that with El Fabiolo as well, but your idea of the winner?
Yeah, I think Mighty Potter is obviously the right favourite. He's a classy horse. Really good performance at Leopardson, really good performance in the Drinmore, and even in the Drinmore he stumbled at the back of the third last and fourth last fence, but he stumbled out of just lack of concentration. His jump was really good. He didn't jump just as well in Leopardson as he did in Ferias, and I thought he won in spite. Maybe he just could have had a little niggle, I felt, on the day. It just wasn't as good, but still a good performance. Of the opposition though, I'd agree with Andy to an extent on Banbridge, but Banbridge stayed on from off the pace that day in the good chase. Appreciated tried to sit with the pace for longer, and for me would have given away second place because he tried to stay with Dysart Dynamo and El Fabiolo. So I think Appreciated is the one who's likely to run in this. And I would say if he's ridden slightly conservative, which would be the natural thing to do, stepping up and trip, to me, he would represent big value. Now, 9-year-olds wouldn't have a good record in winning novice chases like these, but he's here as a 9-year-old. There's not many 9-year-olds running these races. That's why there isn't a good record for them. But I think Appreciated for me would be the value. But if you ask me what would I like to ride in it, would be Mighty Potter.
Mighty Potter then for the ride. But his jumping can be a little bit sticky. So have we got any flaws in his armour here?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, he absolutely rooted that one going away from the stands, didn't he? And a lesser horse would have definitely fallen. So he has got a bit of self-preservation about him. But, you know, you can't afford to do that on a regular basis around Cheltenham, particularly if you've got good solid jumper in the shape of Banbridge behind you.
Yeah, okay then. And I'm also with Appreciated though because of that jumping angle. Mighty Potter, again, like Edwardstone for me. I'm going to be proven like an absolute fool, not for the first time, but with Mighty Potter, because he's another horse where everyone talks about this ability that he has, but he's just another horse that I just want to take on, and there's no rhyme or reason to it, but Appreciated, the 9-year-old, stepping up in trip. Like I say, I felt sorry for him that he tried to keep tabs on Dysart Dynamo last time out, paid for that ultimately. So, yeah, divided opinions somewhat and agreeing in other areas.
Yeah, no, I like it. I like to see I like the contrasted opinions as well. There's a cold-hearted stop clock merchant over here. And but I mean, I think you really reined in a bit there, Barry, because earlier on when we did a few clips before the show, you were grinning from ear to ear when we mentioned Mighty Potter. It almost felt like Andy had talked you out of how much of a certainty you thought he was.
No, I love Mighty Potter. I rode him work before Leopardstown, and he is gorgeous, he is class. But Appreciated is a very good horse. Banbridge is a good horse, but for me, he wouldn't have the level of class of Appreciated or Mighty Potter. No, Mighty Potter, I said, the first thing I said was he's the right favourite. There's no doubt. But it's like what I mentioned earlier on about Constitutional Hill. It isn't in the bag until it's in the bag. So if you're looking for value, Appreciated is of a similar level. And what price is Appreciated?
7 to 4.
They're all
7 to 4 to 5. He's a 4-1 shot. No, but 9-year-olds in novice chases again.
But not many 9-year-olds are there. So like you know, there's not many opportunities given to 9-year-olds to win it.
Well, it just kind of means, but surely it just means that.
And sorry, not many classy 9-year-olds.
Yeah, but if you're a 9-year-old novice chaser, it means something's gone wrong along the way.
He missed a year.
Yeah, no, I know, but if his rivals didn't, and he's up against horses who are very much on their prime. I don't know. I feel like it'd be me going playing kickabout with 16-year-olds and expecting to keep up. I mean, he's just gonna
Don't do yourself a disservice, Ross.
No, they'd absolutely batter me. No, it's fine, and I don't know. There's just something about it. Maybe I think he's missed his boat. But you all, this is more like it, a bit of disagreement. And Barry, you're looking at me like I've gone absolutely mad, and it's absolutely fine. I appreciate it.
Nice one.
There you go. Let's go on to the Ryanair then, shall we? Where Shishkin is 8-11 favourite for this. Obviously, Allaho ruled out a couple of weeks ago, and Shishkin bursting back onto the scene at Ascot with that incredible win. He's 8-11 to beat Blue Lord, who's at 9-2, and the rest of the prices were on that screen that's just gone off. But should Shishkin be odds on, which he is now? That is the question we're going to ask to you now. Is Shishkin the right price? Should he be such a hot favourite? And given that the Irish have got such a strong hand, it's quite interesting that the two odds-on shots of the week are both trained in Britain by Nicky Henderson. Should Shishkin be odds on? It's a wild swing there. There's a lot of opinions there. So get your opinions on there for Shishkin being odds on. But of course, Leonna, a few weeks ago, if I said to you that Shishkin was going to be 8-11 for the Ryanair, you'd have looked at me like Barry just did there. But it's all changed in the Ryanair the past couple of weeks, and the favourite was back to his best.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was hardly surprising, wasn't it? He just looked so good at Ascot. He was the horse we'd all hoped he was, and we'd seen in the past. It was emotional if you saw Nicky Henderson, because it was seeing that he really felt and saw that he'd got him back, and he'd done everything he needed to do. Clearly, the wind up and the tongue tie didn't do him any harm. I mean, if you've never seen him in the flesh, he is a big horse, and if you're a big person, your win's probably worse than if you're not. So, you know, it could be a similar thing for him. The tongue tie's made a difference. The wind up has. As they went that bit slower up to trip, he just looked more confident, didn't he? And they were the exact words that were said afterwards. I'm not telling you anything that's not already been said. He just looked back to his best. He looked happier. He jumped well. You know, from a physical point of view, he looked fit, ready. Everything looked set there for that. But there were so many question marks before the race, but not after. I do think he should be very short. I think he looked amazing. I wouldn't back him at that price. I wouldn't ever back anything at that price personally. I thought that Janadil is the capable horse in that race to at least get into the frame. He's a strange horse because he's never looked quite quick enough for 2. He doesn't quite stay 3. You know, it's the perfect race for him. So I feel like he's underrated. He's chased home some decent horses in plenty of his starts. So Janadil, tell us.
Yeah, he won in Goran. In the race that Tor Calor was favourite in, I think, of Willie's. Yeah, it was a good performance, having had a bit of time off. I didn't know what to make of the race that Shishkin won. I thought Fakadou Dari was beaten after 2 fences, and I thought Pig Dory is just a horse, so I think he was flattered by his performance. But looking through the Ryanair, it's very difficult to find a horse that's going to beat him. But Blue Lord is 5-1, he's 8-11. It's hard to believe that Blue Lord is not going to be in the first 3. So Blue Lord or Janadil. I wouldn't like to be back in Shishkin at 8-11. I didn't think he was very impressive in Ascot, but I didn't think it was much of a race. He probably will win, but 8-11's short enough for me.
Andrew?
It was good time at Ascot, and Shishkin, you go back. He was a pointer winner at 4 years of age, winning over 3 miles. So I think they'd probably have stepped him up last year if he hadn't been doing as well as he had been. So I think he's been crying out for the step up and trip for a couple of seasons. Because when you look to his races, when he's been winning over 2 miles, he was always just coming off the bridle at a certain stage, and then he picked up late on. So I think he'd be certainly, for me, if you want to back him for a King George, I'd back him now, because I think he'd be very impressive at Cheltenham. To share Malahoi isn't turning up, because I think it would have been a real good matchup. But he's back to his best from what I've seen. It's just, for me, he's had the wind up, but it's the step up in trip which is the key. You know, he's a King George horse all over. Will he win here? I think he will. Yeah. All he has to do is reproduce what he did at Ascot. I'd be with AP as well. Janadil each way. He was 14 lengths behind Allaho last year. He's the best of the Irish, and he was ridden to run well. And with Leonna as well. Yeah.
Too late. Janadil and Fakir Duderi's in there as well. Do you know, will they both run in there? Or?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think Janadil, the plan is to run. I'm not sure about Fakadou Dari yet. As I said, he was very disappointing in Ascot, so he was beaten very early. Yeah, you can see why Shishkin's favourite. It was very impressive, as there's probably not a lot of depth to the race, but maybe one of those horses like Janadil each way might be a safer play for me.
There we go. We all agree. Easy.
There you go. Does everyone ever go on the poll? Should Shishkin be odds on? 55% of you think you do. So, yeah, plenty of opinions there. I just want a quick one, because one of the most expensive Ryanairs of my life was when I took on Riverside Theatre in running, and where you somehow booted him home to beat UAP on Alberta's run.
Who the invited you here? Anyone else nearly asleep that wants to come up here and actually take his place? No. I mean, there's bound to be someone that's bored of tears. So anyone that is, feel free to, you know.
Anybody would have thought he was bitter, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I was going to ask, the question I was going to ask you was, what do you say
forgot
to a
about
jockey
it. I can't
afterwards?
remember. I don't know. Who knows? Who gives a shit? I don't. I can't remember losing that race, Ross. No. Move on.
Buttering up for Barry's session, isn't it? All this.
Yeah. Like I said, I was going to say, what do you say to anything to after the
You
line?
are actually a comedian, aren't you? Oh, sorry, you. That's what you go by, isn't it? Yeah. Yes. I've worked that out tonight. Yeah. I'm joking.
You know, I had a whole day of this stroppiness between these when we watched back all those races, the footage that we've been showing in shops. I mean, it was tricky. You were stroppy when you got beat on the videos that you got beat.
Yeah, I got beat a lot. Thankfully.
No,
I actually did. I actually was the most jockey ever until Richard Johnson beat me, which is amazing. He is a complete loser.
Well, I don't know what question it was going to ask, but I'm glad I asked it. But yeah, I am occasionally a comedian, AP, and I learned fairly quickly who not to pick on in the crowd. What?
That you were
Absolutely. But only one of us has officially retired from their job. Yeah, Barry, great ride, I thought, in the Ryanair. You absolutely... You timed it to perfection, and I know the jockey on the second was he was a very talented lad. He was what?
Conditional, wasn't it?
I think it was, yeah. Yeah, I mean, he was a bit inexperienced, I think I'm going to get killed. but yeah, I hope it's... I hope I get to live to see the Ryanair this year, quite frankly. But what was going to win again, AP? What? Should we move on? Let's move on to the stayers. 3 miles distance for this championship hurdle. Blazing Carl is 11-4 favourite. Chupu is 4-1. Marie's Rock is 9-2. Flooring Porter 6-1. Home by the Lead 13-2. Classical Dream 10. Sir Gerhard is 10s. Gold Tweet is 12-1. Paisley Park is 14-1. And bigger the rest. I'm not looking over there. I'm talking to you lot first, quite frankly, for the stayers hurdle.
You've made our team anyway. We've made our team very happy. So yeah.
Yeah,
speak
well,
to us anytime.
I mean, it wasn't. It's quite frankly by default, I think. But
We'll take it.
You'll take it. Completely wide open stayers hurdle here. Last year won by Flooring Porter, who Gavin Cromwell was saying, "Oh, we're not sure we're going to get him back to his best in time for Cheltenham." But you get that feeling that that's going to come to fruition, and he's going to be ready and raring to go. And he's got Irish challenger after Irish challenger after Irish challenger in here. So it could be, as the stayers hurdle always is, open and full of horses with completely different profiles.
Yeah, still a championship race apparently, still one of the 4. For all that, the one thing you cannot begrudge about this division is just how competitive it is. It's an absolute motley crew, a bunch of headbangers, but you cannot dismiss how competitive this is, lads. Anyway, and you say about Flooring Porter, at least the Gavin Cromwell form is coming back readily at the minute. And Flooring Porter comes here in arguably in some better form than he has done in previous years as well. But yeah, it's a tricky one to decide between them. I mean, is Blazing Carl even going to get here another setback, Andy? So how are you playing it?
It's not a vintage crop, is it? I think it's been like this for the last few years, isn't it? Is that fair to say? The stayers hurdle just been a little bit below par. Fair play to Flooring Porter, but he did come through from the handicap ranks, which probably tells you all you need to know about the sort of standard of the 3-mile division. But look, we've got a great race, haven't we? I mean, genuinely could fancy 5 or 6 here, and you still might not be on the winner. The one thing against Blazing Carl would be, I think the last Boyne Hurdle winner to win the Stayers Hurdle in the same year was Doran's Pride back in 1996. Actually, stats are there to be broken, but there's a reason for it, isn't there? That no horse has won it for 25 years or so. So that would slightly put me off him. Tiupu, I think he's probably more ground dependent than most in this race. He just didn't shine at all last year at the festival. I know that was in the Champion Hurdle, but the fast ground definitely was against him. He's been really good on soft ground so far this season. Hatton's Grace and, of course, at Gowran when the ground's been bottomless. I think that's very much him. So that if it does rain, then obviously he's a big player. Obviously, the interesting one is Marie's Rock. I mean, if she's parachuted in here, she's going to add extra spice to the race. And I think she probably will come here, judged on what Epatant's going to do, and Nikki won't run 2 in the same race. And she's a real big player, I feel. She looks as though she'll stay 3 miles really strongly. She's obviously a Cheltenham Festival winner. She comes up the hill well. And then you've got Flooring Porter, who's won it the last 2 years. Is he the same horse? Home by the Lee. He's done nothing wrong. He won the big Grade 1 over in Ireland. So, like I say, I'm struggling for a really strong view here. I've probably got a better view or stronger view on how to stack my dishwasher than this race. But if you gave me a bet at the prices, I think Home by the Lee, he's probably the way I'd go, because I think he's almost the forgotten horse. But let's face it, he has won the best race in Ireland, the best trial in Ireland, and he beat Flooring Porter. So I think he's slightly overpriced.
I totally agree. I just don't understand what more this horse has to do to be challenging for favouritism. I'm just completely missing something about this horse, because he's beaten the dual champion of this race twice already this season. Convincing style. I know he's a bit of an oddball. He kind of gets rev beforehand, then he's behind the bridle in the race. Whether or not they'd be tempted with headgear, I'm not entirely sure. But the fact that he showed such a turn of foot, JJ7, it kind of took him by surprise last time out when he went forwards and he kind of reached the front a bit too soon, I thought. So if he can just show that level of pace again, I think that puts him bang in the mix. But are we missing something?
No, I think another point to make about Home by the Lee, he's a little bit of a claustrophobic horse. He doesn't like racing in amongst horses, so JJ11 will have to race him out wide. So it'd probably be pertinent just to see how the track's riding. If it's favouring the inside of the track, then that might not necessarily suit him because he's going to be 3 or 4 widths off of it. So yeah, that might count against Home by the Lead, but that's just because of the way he likes to race.
Yeah, I can't get my head around his price. I'll take it, but I can't get my head around his price. Now, we do have a 7 Barrows insider. Does Marie's Rock go here first and foremost, and then who are you tipping up?
I don't know if she does.
Thanks for being our insider.
Well, you labelled me with the title. I didn't offer it. I don't know, but reading with the paper and general vibe is there's a good chance she will. As regards the race itself, just to start with Home by the Lee. So that race in Leopardstown, Home by the Lee made the run, and Florian Porter didn't turn up. He's usually a very aggressive, pulls hard. He never stiffened the reins. So he was dead as a maggot. Florian Porter beat Ashdale Bob 3 lengths. Ashdale Bob won't be within 100 yards or 200 yards at the finish of this. Meet and Greet was in third, who was second to Blazing Cal when he beat him easily in Navan last time. So Home of the Lee ran well in the race last year. He was beaten 7 lengths. I think he'll be beaten, maybe not 7 lengths, but he'll be beaten. He will be beaten. He won't win it, I don't think. Blazing Cal has to step up in what he's done to date, but he's 4 from 4 of hurdles, so he is unproven in the William Hill Boyne hurdle in Navan last time.
Well done. This is why you are making the big bucks from these lads now. Very nicely done.
Oh, I didn't realise it was on a pay rise.
I'm telling you a lot of things that are new to you, apparently.
So, Flooring Porter, yeah, it's going to be a struggle for him to bounce back. He was second to Classical Dream in the Dublin race last year at Christmas before coming back to the festival. He generally needs his first run when he was beaten in Navan at the start of the season, but I don't think it's an ideal prep for him to have missed time through injury, coming on the back of a bad run, so I'd struggle with him. Tia Hoopu, I'd come back to. I feel he doesn't necessarily need soft ground as much as he needs a test of stamina. He bombed out along with Mighty Potter last year at Cheltenham, and I think there's a bit of a common theme there with both horses and Summer Gordon. Gordon didn't have an amazing Cheltenham last year, and I think those were 2 horses that maybe just were maybe over the boil, if you like. Tia Hoopu has been very impressive. And as I say, I think he's more stamina dependent rather than ground dependent. He wouldn't want it really quick, but it's going to be watered ground. I would take a chance on Tia Hoopu. He's the proven horse. Maria's Rock would be a big danger if she comes in. Blazing Cal, he's yet to do it, but he has the potential to do it.
Definitely has the potential for that man, Charles Burns, again then. But you are mainly with Tia Hoopu, though, for the selection.
I would, yeah.
Now, yep. And then Andy is very, very convincing on Home by the Lee, so I'm siding with him as well.
Yeah, very much, really good case for Home by the Lee, who's currently a 13-2 shot. But coming over to this side, I'm going to say Flooring Porter is the one who's won it the last couple of years. He's only 8 years old, and the comment unchallenged keeps popping up in his Grade 1 wins. Is everyone ignoring the champ?
I don't think he's ignored, is he, in the betting really at 6s? I think this is the kind of race where horses can pop up at big prices because it is a tricky situation often. There was lots of horses in here that I didn't love, and we were talking about horses being solid and horses who the race is set fair for, especially Cheltenham. For me, my horse is nowhere near on that screen. He's much further down in Sire de Burley. I mean, he's been running well at Cheltenham for about 5 years now. He excels there. This is the kind of race for him. If he goes there at 66-1, he's a crazy price. You know, he's becoming well handicapped. Wasn't in love with the ride last time in Navan. He kind of raced a bit lazy and he went back, and then he ran on again in the day when it was all too late, beating kind of 10 lengths in a decent race. So at 66, he's absolutely my bet in the race, and I hope close to the time I can back him again with more places. So I'm hoping he goes in there, AP, but he's been liking it around there for years.
Yeah, Barry won the Pertemps on him twice, didn't you? And he obviously was disappointing in Pertemps last year, but he did win the Grade 1 in the entry. he just has lost his way a little bit, and it's just whether he'd run in this or where he may stay in Ireland, where his actually handicap mark has dropped. Yeah. Who knows? If he did run, he may give you a good run for your money in what looks a very open stairs hurdle. Blazing Cal is obviously a talented horse, but has got plenty of issues. I'm not so sure about Teahupu. I think he likes, the twice that he's ran with the ground hasn't had soft or heavy in it. He has been disappointing, and I think there's a risk. Yeah, if the ground was to be soft, he's probably the best horse in the race. But I wouldn't like to be backing him if they didn't need good in the ground at all. I'm like Andy. I think Home by the Lee is an improving horse. Travelled much better in Epperstown last time than he did in Navan the first day. I know he got beaten in the race last year, but he could be improving. He looks like he's improving, not that he could be. He does look like he's definitely improved. And Florin Porter, no doubt, is a better horse in Cheltenham than he is anywhere else, because his best form is here, and his best performances have been there, so I'm sure he will run better. But I think Home by the Lee is the one with the less risks attached, unless the ground on the Thursday had soft or heavy in it. Then there's no doubt I think Teahupu is the best horse on that kind of ground, but there's big question marks about him when it's not. So those are the two. Home by the Lee if the ground is good or anywhere like that, and maybe Teahupu if it was heavy. Teahupu.
3 for Home by the Lee, Andrew.
Yeah, well, AP's won this before with more of that, didn't you?
You've been smart as well, huh? Another one I wrote the wrong one. Yeah, go on anyway.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, Barry wrote it.
It's me and you versus AP.
Do you know what? I'm just working out here. He could have ridden.
Surprised I wrote any winners at all.
You could have ridden a lot more winners at the Cheltenham Festival if you were a better judge. It's true. True.
Do we have a price on AP versus me and Andrew Thornton?
All I was going to say is, Ross, at least he had a choice. I never had a choice. I'm Florin Porter. I'm with Barry. He's a horse who likes his racing, and he likes plenty of racing. And he's had interrupted preparation. I just think he had a purple patch for 2 years, and he's going to struggle. Marie's Rock is definitely the dark horse. Will she stay the trip? I don't know. She settles an awful lot better. She used to be quite keen in her race, but she settles a lot better. But it will be a big field, and that would be my slight worry for her. I agree with AP, Home by the Lee, and with Andy. I just think that last year this horse went into the race. He'd had a chase campaign. He had one hurdle run beforehand, and I think he was second at 80-1. It was an afterthought going into this. Whereas this year, good campaign, confidence, he's improving. I think that's the most important thing. And one thing, if he is a bit behind the bridle, how often do we see in this race that horses that are a bit behind the bridle, he finishes exceptionally well, and he'll be staying on when the others are stopping, and I think he's the big each way plate.
So the gist of that, lads, is I had 2 horses to choose from in the stairs hurdle. They finished first and third. He wants to ride 5 in this year's one. so make of that what you will.
Leonna's no, that's fine, absolutely. So I mean, you're a much better jockey than I was. Oh,
drive on, come on, get on. No one cares, Ross.
Right, day 3, best of the rest then, in terms of the bets from the Andrews. Mr. Holding, first things.
There's an interesting run in the Per Temps. Gordon Elliott's got a great record in it recently, and it usually pays attention to make note of whatever wins the Leopardstown qualifier, which I think has thrown up at least 4 or 5 of the last 6 winners. He won it with Maxim, who, talking about Home by the Lee, he actually ran a faster time than Home by the Lee, the Grade 1 winner. And he also was much quicker on the final circuit as well when you do the circuit by circuit comparisons. So much so, there was a little bit of a word going around the street that Maxim should be entered into the Stays hurdle. And I did notice that Gordon Elliott, when he was commented on the other day about whether his horses were good or badly handicapped, and he just said, they've all been given fair marks, which was rather strange, really, because Maxim got well and truly beat the other day for a mark of 138, and yet the handicapper, the British handicapper, is putting him up to 145, which is a little bit of a contradiction in terms. But the fact that I think Gordon's happy with 145 probably tells you all you need to know there. And he got absolutely mullered behind Percival Le Galois when he went back to Leopardstown. It was rather odd. I don't know why he needed to run Maxim. He'd already qualified. He got his mark, and yet he went and ran him again. So read into that what you will. I do think Percival de Gaulois is a good horse. He's a strong traveller. And on good ground, I think he's a big player. He's sure to be bang there going to the last because he's got a high cruising speed. But I can't get out of my mind Maxim, the way he won that qualifier. I mean, he looks as though he just jumped in at the last. It's absolutely astonishing. So he'd be my pick there. I've got a big fancy for one in the Kim Muir, Stump Stan. Don't know if any of you saw him win the other day at Sandown. Typical Irish project, needed to win to get into the handicap. I think he won 125. He jumped brilliantly. He's now in the handicap courtesy of that victory. And they've booked Barry O'Neill to ride him in the Kim Muir. And the other one I quite like was Night and Day in the Mares race, who won at Clonmel very impressively. I wouldn't be totally sure about Lucia at a short price. Her technique over a couple of her hurdles, and they've been plastic hurdles as well. She hasn't jumped the timber hurdles yet. I'm yet to be convinced, so I'd go Night and Day in the Mares. Okay,
a few best of the rest there. Mr. Thornton?
Walking on air was mine in the Pertemps. I was a little bit ahead of myself. Lucia for the Mares. I always think that the hurdles at Cheltenham aren't as upright as other tracks. I think she'll be fine. You know, would I worry about one of Nicky Henderson's jumping? Never. She's 4 from 4 and she's won on 4 different tracks. I think she's just class.